Jeff Stinky Turner here, and welcome to my debut edition of Jeff Stinky Turner's Top 10. Rough and ready, here we go. And today's subject for me is going to be my top 10 punk albums of all time. Now, top 10s can be pretty subjective. I'm sure people out there will go, fuck me, how comes he left this one out? How comes this one wasn't in it? But it's just from my experience, growing up as a kid, and the stuff that I loved. And for me, in my humble opinion, the top 10 punk albums of all time. Let's cut the bollocks and get started. Welcome, people. Now, for my favourite punk albums, I'm going to go from a list from number 10 to number 1. So I'm going to start at number 10 with Full and Fallout by the Lurkers, released in the summer of 1978. Now, I first bought the first two Lurkers singles running up to this, which was Shadow and Ain't Got a Clue. So I was really looking forward to the album. Now, the album was produced by Mick Klosek, who worked with Magazine. He went on to work with the Skids, Public Image, and funny enough, he also worked with Van Morrison and Frank Zappa, so I don't know how that happened. But to me, the Lurkers reminded me a bit of a British Ramones, and I thought this was a really strong debut album. And funny enough, I think it was October 1978, I went with my brother Mickey and we went over to Woolwich Poly in South London to go and see the Lurkers. The place was packed with skinheads, and the skinheads just battered the fuck out of each other and they ruined the venue. And when I looked at the Lurkers, you had the fella Pete Stride, who was the guitar player. It was just like fucking Brian May. He had a mullet, skinny tie, and then you had Howard Wall, the singer, who had a mullet. Nothing against that, and you got all these fucking skinheads going fucking crazy and bashing the place up. But anyway, I thought it was a great fucking album, and I really thought that the Lurkers were going to go on and really kick on, to become the British Ramones. But then the next year they followed it up with a disappointing God's Lonely Men, which didn't really hit the mark. From then on, I guess it was downhill. But whatever happens, they've always got their album in the locker. So number 10, Full and Fallout, the Lurkers. And at number 9 in my top 10 is In the City by The Jam, which was released in May 1977 on Polydor Records. I'd heard In the City by The Jam and see him do it on Top of the Pops, and it just had this abrasiveness about it, and it had an energy about it, so absolutely looked forward to buying the album. Well, the album was brilliant. Songs like Away from the Numbers, Bricks and Mortar, absolutely brilliant. We can forgive him from the Batman theme, because that didn't really cut it, but it said a lot. It's 32 minutes long, and it was it had that tone of the London suburbs, and it had anger involved in it, and it was just everything. It was singing about street life, and obviously we know the Jam went on to greater things. They're a legendary British band, and hearing that album in 1977 really was something to behold. It was, and you heard the angst, the sound of the streets, even though it's from Woking in Surrey, but hey, it don't fucking matter where you're from if you're making music like that. So number 9 for me, In the City by The Jam. And at number 8 on my countdown is Can't Stand the Rosillos, obviously by the Rosillos. And this was released in July 1978, and it got the number 16 on the national chart on Sire Records. Now, earlier that year, I bought the debut single, My Baby Love Does Good Sculptures, which I thought was really good. It was quirky. Then all of a sudden, leading up in the summer of 1978, they brought out, which was to become an hit single, Top of the Pops. So I was really looking forward to this album. When I got the album, obviously I wasn't disappointed. Most of the songs written by John Callis, who was, say then, had a meltdown and went on to be part of the Human League. But he wrote most of the songs, and had great stuff on there like Flying Saucer Attack and No. Great stuff. The only thing that might let this album down, one tad, is that there's 3 cover songs on there. 2 of them, which is Glad All Over, and a great version, I've got to say, who Someone's Gonna Get Their Head Kicked In Tonight, which is originally by Fleetwood Mac. In a strange fucking twist of fate, Fleetwood Mac went from Someone's Gonna Get Their Head Kicked In Tonight for about 6 years after that to the fucking dirge of Rihanna. But this album was polished and it was well produced. And what I loved about the Rosillos, it was kind of like cartoon comic, punk rock, and it was fun. It reminded me like, you know, Marvel comic punk rock. And you had like, you know, Eugene Reynolds when he had his mad glasses on and all that, and Faith Fife doing her fucking mad dancing. But everything for this album, it clicked. It was produced by Bob Clearwater and Tony Bon Jovi. Tony Bon Jovi, the cousin of the John Bon Jovi, who incidentally worked with some really, really, really diverse acts, you know what I mean, including Shirley Bassey and different stuff. So he done a great job on that, and I think it's a fantastic album. After that, you would have thought the sky was the limit with the Rosillos, but it never really happened for them. And they still play today, and I'm glad to say we've shared the stage with them on numerous occasions, and still a great band to watch. And I see them at the Lyceum in 1978, November, December 1978, and they was absolutely brilliant. And yeah, that album will stay with me. So well done, number 8, can't stand the Rosillos, the Rosillos. I hope you're hanging in there, pop pickers, as we get to number 7 on Jeff Stinky Turner's list. So number 7 for me is one of my favourite punk bands of all time. Number 7 is Days in Europa, the Skids, released in November 1979. Now, I really got a great liking for the Skids. And just before I talk about the album, I remember in 1978, I went to the Lyceum in the summer of 1978 to see Magazine play, which, that was all right, you know what I mean? Obviously, Howard Devoto being in the Buzzcocks. And the first band on the bill, nobody even knew them. And they was on for about 20-25 minutes. And I watched this band. They was absolutely brilliant. Nobody afterwards, including Magazine, could hold a candle to them. Then I found out that it was the Skids. So later on in that year, a couple of months after, they released Sweet Suburbia. And then obviously we got into 79 and it all went big for them. Into the Valley, Masquerade. Now I've got to say their debut album, Scared to Dance, don't get me wrong, when I first heard it, after seeing them numerous times live, I was a little bit disappointed. So anyway, we rolled on to the fall of 1979 and they had the single Charade, which I thought was really good. And then Days in Europa fell upon us. Now a lot of people might disagree, thought this was a fantastic album. Obviously it was Bill Nelson who produced it, who was part of Bebop Deluxe and a fantastic guitar player. And I think for this, Rusty Egan coming on drums, and I think he had a big influence on it. And there's some absolutely fantastic songs on there. Thanatos, The Olympian, and also Working for the Yankee Dollar. And probably my favourite ever Skid song, which is on there, Animation. And I've got to say, for me, arguably, Stuart Adamson is the greatest guitar player to come out of punk rock. This album was absolutely fantastic. Whether the critics slagged it or not, I don't know, and I don't fucking care. Because for me, it's a masterpiece. Number 7, Days in Europa, the Skids. Now we come to number 6 on my list. Again, one of my favourite, not just punk bands, but one of my favourite bands of all time. And at number 6, I'm bringing in Black and White by The Stranglers. The Stranglers' third studio album after Rattlesnake and then No More Heroes. And this third album, I love the other 2 albums, I think they're brilliant. But there was something about this album I thought they'd really progressed. And for me, this was a peak Stranglers. This was absolutely fantastic. It was released in 1978, and would you believe it got the number 2 on the national charts. That's a fucking big band. But I love this because there was a white side, black side, or let's flip it, black side, white side. And there was some classic songs on this. If you listen to Tank, Sweden, Threatened, and also one of my favourite ever Stranglers tracks, Toiler on the Sea. Now, with the first 75,000, but this album to me was really a coming of age for the Stranglers, produced by Martin Russian, who I'll get on to later on my countdown, whose CV for punk bands is absolutely brilliant. And this album to me, yeah, it's up there. I can't say that, you know what I mean, it's that much better than the first 2 Stranglers albums, but after this, This album was everything to me with the Stranglers, and I don't think they was ever really, recording wise, the same again. But a fantastic album, fantastic band, black and white, Stranglers. At number 5 on my list is the debut album from Generation X. What a fantastic album, what a great band. Produced by Martin Rushton, as I just mentioned earlier, who done the first 3 Stranglers albums. Martin Rushton, he had a great CV, working with the Buzzcocks, Dr. Feelgood, 999, and obviously he produced this album, which is a classic album for me. I love Generation X. First single I bought from there, their debut single, was Your Generation. And I thought it was brilliant. It really had something. And you've got to take into context the musicianship. You had Tony James on the bass, great songwriter as well. Mark Laff was a powerhouse drummer. And then you also had Durwood, another one, got to be one of the top 5 punk guitarists that there's ever been. And of course, Billy Idol with his sneer and the voice. Now, might be an arsehole, but you know, that don't mean nothing. He made great music and he fitted the bill. Now, this album was a great album. It was released in March 1978 and it broke into the top 30 of the UK chart. But classic songs, you just got to listen to 100 Punks, From the Art, Kleenex, and also an absolutely legendary song, Kiss Me Deadly, which I thought was absolutely brilliant. And to this day, I will still play it. When we got into 1979, their follow-up Valley of the Dolls, produced by the legendary Ian Hunter, it was really, really mundane. It was really, really mediocre. Apart from King Rocker, then from then it didn't light any fires. Obviously, everything was a springboard for what Billy Idol would later become, a worldwide megastar who went on to do his own thing. But this is a great punk album and it brings back great memories. And yeah, Generation X, fantastic stuff. That's in at number 5. At number 4, Damned, the debut album. For me, their best album. Now, I know a lot of people would run that close with Machine Gun Etiquette, their 3rd album, which is a great album. But for me, the Damned's first album, with Brian James playing that guitar. I'm not saying he's a better guitar player than Captain Sensible, who's brilliant, but that had everything. I mean, in late 1976, the first punk single, New Rose, listen to that intro. You wouldn't get a better intro on, you know what I mean, anywhere in the world that could outdo that. Absolutely brilliant. And I fell in love with it. Couldn't wait to get the first album. First album didn't disappoint at all. You know, when you've got Fan Club, Feel the Pain, Stab Your Back, and also one of the great covers of the Stooges, I Feel Alright. And that was absolutely brilliant. What's all that at the beginning with it? A. Keith, and then into that chord. And it was just manic, it was mayhem, it was everything that you thought punk is about and what it should have been about. Only 31 minutes long. It's a classic album, and it just shows you from doing that first album, the Damned are still here today. And I think that broke barriers and it opened the path for a lot of bands to say, this is what I want to do. So that album is fantastic. It's number 4 on my list, arguably higher, but that's down to you punters to fucking decide. So number 4, Damned, the Damned, brilliant album. At number 3 in my countdown is Leave Home by the Ramones. One of my favourite all-time albums by one of my favourite all-time bands. This might be controversial because a lot of people think the debut album was their greatest album. But for me, it was Leave Home. It was released in January 1977, 12 years old. But when you hear stuff like this, I'm telling you, there's not one bad song on that album. Now, the 2 singles from it, Swallow My Pride and I Remember You, are absolutely classics. But when you put that needle onto the groove, and you heard such great songs like Glad to See You Go, like Susie is an Headbanger, and there was so much great stuff, Commando, and the cover song on there, California Sun. Then we come to Pinhead at the end, Gabba Gabba Ray. Absolutely brilliant. This album was a masterpiece. And again, if you're talking about influence, how many people from 1977 when the album came out, how many bands through the ages, even today, has that influence? And the Ramones are probably bigger today than they ever was then. Again, produced by Tony Bon Jovi, of we've mentioned him earlier, and Tommy Elderlight. I think I've pronounced that properly. Obviously, it was the drummer, Tommy Ramone, and they did a fantastic job. Even though the first Ramones album is legendary, it's brilliant, I thought this was cleaner, better produced and bigger, and there's not one bad song on this album. Legendary album, legendary band. It really could have been number 2 in my list, but I perch it at number 3. Leave Home, the Ramones, absolute fucking banger. Number 2, could toss a coin between this and number 1, but number 2 is the debut album from The Clash, released in March 1977. What a fantastic album this is, and the energy, the rawness of it, and singing about the things that you really could relate to at the time. Career opportunities, White Riot, everything about it was fantastic, and it was nailed with these songs. There wasn't songs that was over 3 or 4 minutes long, and obviously you got the fantastic cover on there. The first one's really a mixed reggae with punk rock. The cover of Police and Thieves is absolutely brilliant. Now, I first heard The Clash when I heard Complete Control, and I've got to say, that is my number 1 punk single of all time. But this album, when it come out, it absolutely spoke to you. From when you hear the snare beat to Janny Jones, and then you've got Garageland, 48 Hours, Cheat. There's so many that we could go through. It was an absolutely fantastic album, legendary, as I say, that spurred on so many people. Now, in 1979, this album then got released in the USA, and they took off some of the songs, I think like Cheat, 48 Hours and Denied, and replaced them with White Man in the Hammersmith Palais, Clash City Rockers, just for an American audience. Great songs, but that don't fit in on that album. That album was just so good, and it's raw, the rawness of it. It sounds as if it was recorded in about 3 days, and initially that's what punk was about. Now people say, oh, the Clash sold out when they signed to CBS. I don't buy that. We maybe never would have fucking heard them if they hadn't signed to CBS, and then everybody would have been a loser. But for me, that Clash first album, it says everything about it. It's pure fucking British, and it's pure fucking punk rock in its finest form. Number 2, The Clash, absolutely great stuff. Alright people, the moment you've all been waiting for. The number 1 album on my countdown, the number 1, the best punk album of all time. And people might say, how fucking predictable, but I don't give a shit anyway, because my number 1 is Nevermind the Bollocks by the Sex Pistols, released in October 1977. Now for me, this is probably the most important rock and roll album that's ever been made. And when you think in the mid-70s, dipping into the late 70s, going around that time, we had ELP, we had King Crimson, we had Yes, and we had all these like prog bands, you know, with 20-minute fucking drum solos and fucking keyboards that were whizzing around for fucking 10 minutes. Now the Pistols come along and they absolutely fucking smashed it. They lit a fire under everybody's fucking arse. And see this album, for people like myself, a working class fucking kid who had fuck all, this resonated for me, and it would have for people who lived in fucking Birmingham, fucking Manchester, Liverpool, Sunderland, Newcastle, etc., and all these working class places. It give you hope and thought, I can form a fucking band, I can be in a band, I can get up and fucking have a go at doing this, because you didn't have to have a fucking Hammond organ, or your mum and dad had to fucking send you to fucking music lessons and all that old bollocks. This was for fucking working class people. And when you think the amount of people, even today, that this fucking great album has influenced, it's off the fucking charts. Absolutely fantastic album. Now, when we come back to it, I mean, they was only youngsters. You think of the guitar sound from Steve Jones. Absolutely awesome. I don't think I've ever heard a better guitar sound on any other fucking rock album in history. And there was all that old bollocks, never mind the bollocks, about Chris Spedding played guitar on it and all that. I ain't fucking having that. And we know Steve Jones, it was his baby. And he played 80-90% of the bass guitar on it. They said Sid Vicious might have played on Bodies, but I suppose he was fucking right down in the mix. And then when you come on to Johnny Lydon, that voice, that distinctive voice, it said it all. The anger, the angst in it, and the lyrics he was writing as a young fella in his early fucking 20s, it was absolutely something else. Absolutely brilliant. And everything for that album was perfect. It meshed together. There's not one bad second or minute on this album. And when you think of the classics, take away the singles from Submission to New York, Liar, and one of my favourite ever Pistol song, EMI. Absolutely brilliant. And when you think of the sound of it, and also the production, what a masterstroke to get Chris Thomas and Bill Price in, co-producers. I mean, Chris Thomas, he'd worked with the Beatles, he'd worked with Procol Harum, Badfinger. He had a really, really, really big CV in rock. And then also Bill Price, he had worked with, you know, really, really, really fucking good bands. He had a good CV as well. So them coming together and then producing this Pistols album, it's just a masterpiece. I remember seeing Noel Gallagher, and he was on Never Mind the Bollocks, the making of it, classic albums. And he said, quite rightly, if I had made this album, this was my album, after I'd done it, I could have walked away because you'd never better it. It was that good. And I agree with Noel Gallagher on that. He absolutely fucking nailed it with that comment. Absolute classic, absolute brilliant. And you've got to ask yourself, was it meant to be just that one album? Could they have ever got near it? Could they ever have surpassed it? In my humble opinion, I don't think so. But, like most people, I'd like to have heard them have a go and see what they could have come out with. Obviously, you've also got to give great credit to Glenn Matlock, songwriter. And for me, it was always a shame that Glenn left the band and they got the other geezer in Sid. Because then I do think that they could have gone on and done something really, really, really good with a second album. But anybody out there, you know it, and I think we all do, that Pistols, Never Mind the Bollocks, is the greatest punk album of all time. And the influence that it's had for fucking thousands, millions across the world, I don't think that could be fucking bettered. Absolutely brilliant. Number one is the Pistols, Never Mind the Bollocks. I hope you've enjoyed this top 10. And I welcome your comments if anyone want to make some, as long as you're not calling me a wanker. And I know some people will disagree with this and, you know, say, why weren't that one in there and why wasn't the other one? So, you know, remember, when you're watching this, click on and subscribe. And we'll come out with another top 10 on another subject in another couple of weeks. Jeff Turner, Rupp and Ready, oi oi, come on.